Welcome to Sacred Harmony, where we explore meeting point of science, spirit, and self-healing. Today I'm joined by Dr. Danielle Griffin, a powerhouse of mind-body wisdom, TEDx speaker, and author who bridges somatic awareness with hypnotherapy to help people move from tension to transformation. Together, we'll uncover how your body can become your greatest ally in healing chronic stress and pain. Welcome to the show. It's such an honor to have you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Mhm. So, Dr. Daniel here often said that the body remembers what the mind forgets. So, how do somatic exercise help people release what's stored in the body?
Yeah, somatic exercise focuses on awareness, really taking the time that you need to bring awareness to your mental and physical well being. And so oftentimes we're moving through life quickly. It's not until we're having chronic pain issues where we start to realize, like, hey, something's going on. But we can use somatic exercise to take the time, on a daily basis, even just a few minutes a day, to really start to sense where we're experiencing pain, discomfort, being aware of some of the triggers that are causing it. When we are experiencing mental and emotional stress, it starts to linger in our bodies. Oftentimes we'll carry it maybe in our jaw, our neck, our back, various areas. Some of those points can be triggered by past traumatic events, like maybe car accidents or things like that. And you start to hold that tension until it becomes, worse, where you maybe need a surgery or it's irreversible, and we're just walking around in pain or with other chronic diseases.
Mm-hmm. Right. And can you share a moment when a client's physical shift led to a deep emotional release?
Yeah. So, for me, after COVID, coming out of COVID, I was working a lot. I had a full time job, a business. I was a yoga instructor as well. Um, I was operating on very little sleep, as well as managing my family life. I had two sons, but I just had another baby at that time. And so I was just moving so quickly and just like barely surviving essentially, just trying to live my life and not even knowing how I was feeling, um, and stacking on tasks and other responsibilities on top of it, until I was burnt out. Wasn't getting enough sleep at night. Um, my I was suffering from chronic back pain, also high blood pressure. I couldn't understand why I couldn't get my blood pressure down. Um, and that was a breaking point for me. And when I discovered somatic exercise and came across these healing techniques as well as the hypnotherapy, it allowed me to have, really a mindset shift on how I view life, and that I don't have to continue to do more to be more productive, to be more effective at the work that I do. It allowed me to, release some of the pain, the trauma that I was experiencing. We had also lost my father, and my husband lost his father. So we were going through some emotional trauma during that period as well. And it just allowed me to mentally and physically release, mentally in terms of being able to move forward, being able to, you know, come to grasp with doing less um, responsibilities in terms of my roles and my jobs and my businesses, and being able to start to see a life where I could, maybe delegate, maybe still build my business without having to stress myself out mentally and physically. And so it was really that process where I started to heal. And once I learned it, I could easily see, many others, especially in my immediate circle, my immediate family who could use this, who also needed this, who was going through that, same or similar stress, emotional anxiety. A lot of us had lost family members during COVID, whether it's from COVID or other illnesses, oftentimes chronic as well. A lot of us were struggling during that time, to dealing with those losses. Um, but we just continued to hide how we felt by continuing to put more work and stress on top of us.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. It really highlights how healing can happen without words, through presence and awareness alone.
Right, exactly. It doesn't take much, we it's just a matter of looking within, you know, and sometimes it's, still being able to understand how you feel so that you can seek the right help, being able to seek and understand, identify what it is that you're feeling. I think about my mom, for example, and she's gone back and forth to various physicians about nerve pain, back pain, leg pain, and she had struggled really articulating what hurts. It just hurts, right? Everything hurts. But you're gonna end up going round and round in circles with doctors trying to identify pain, doing surgeries, different procedures, steroid shots, ablations, whatever the case may be, um, because we lack that kind of central awareness to understand really how we're feeling and and what helps, what movements help, what breath work helps, what things we do to make it worse, and what things we do either to make it better or what we're doing when we don't feel pain. And we often don't take those moments to observe that. Like, oftentimes we're not in pain 100% of the time. We're not in discomfort 100% of the time. So when do you actually feel good? And what does that feel like? And when do you feel bad? And what does that feel like? And being able to differentiate the two.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%. And also, hypnotherapy often sounds mysterious to many. How does it complement somatic work in creating lasting relief?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people associate the hypnotherapy with like stage shows and magic tricks and things like that. And although there is that component, um, it can be a really powerful tool for mindset work. Um, and I typically associate hypnotherapy with meditation. I just say for me, in somatics, it's breath work, meditation, and movement. And I just use hypnotherapy as my form of meditation. And so it's just a deeper work where you're really accessing the subconscious to make the changes that you seek, allowing the mind to visualize and identify like, hey, there's a life for me outside of what I'm currently feeling. If I can visualize, if I can imagine myself living this, not necessarily new life, but feeling better, being more productive, happy, whatever the things that I want to feel, and I can actually imagine myself doing that, then my mind can actually make that happen. My mind can connect the dots to say, how do I get here from here? And oftentimes we want to fight ourselves, our conscious mind, like, all right, I need to know every single step, how I'm going to get there. But your mind, your subconscious doesn't need to know. It will figure it out along the way as long as it put that marker in that says, this is the goal. This is where we're going. And you'll start to see the progress over time. And it's super, super powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's amazing.
Yes, definitely.
And do you find resistance from clients who fear losing control to your hypnosis?
No, because that's one common myth is that you lack control, and actually you're in full control during hypnosis. Whoever's leading you through it are giving you, guided suggestions, leading you through the path, but at any moment, if a person wants to come out of it, if they're for some reason feeling unsafe, they can come out of it. You know, you're never gonna do anything you don't want to do when you're under hypnosis. And so when people recognize that when they're going through the visualizations, they start to realize like, oh yeah, I am in full control. Like my mind is leading me. The person who's leading me isn't telling me what to see. It's my mind that's creating all the visualizations.
It's fascinating how real control actually begins when we stop fighting our own subconscious patterns.
Exactly.
Mhm. And also, chronic stress has become almost fashionable. Like people wear it like a badge of productivity. How can somatic awareness help shift that culture?
Yeah, I think, it really goes back to that mindset, um, and starting to be aware of what it is you truly want in life and recognizing, you know, if you're maybe a business owner and you have these goals, whether it be like a 1 year, quick obtainable goal or a lofty 10-year goal, there are numerous paths to reach that goal. And those paths do not have to end in stress and burnout or have stress and burnout all throughout the way, right? And so once a person can, um, use some of the mindset work, especially when it comes to the hypnotherapy, to recognize like, hey, I don't have to feel this way in order to reach my goals. Um, then they can start to remove that that badge of honor, like you mentioned. You know, oftentimes that badge really comes from the need or the desire to achieve things, to show that they've achieved things, to show that they've reached their goals. But once they can make the connection that I can still achieve and not feel this way, then that stress and burnout badge will become irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And so, what's one small somatic practice you'd recommend for busy professionals starting today?
Yeah. I usually recommend, at minimum, I call it the 90-second pause. And, a somatic practice is always, breath work, meditation, and movement. And so if you want, you can always start a little timer or just, kind of start to develop that sense of awareness. But, taking 30 seconds to breathe, 30 seconds to find some movement. Like once you breathe, figure out where you're feeling the discomfort, bringing that awareness to your body and bringing movement to those areas. So if it's your jaw, can do some jaw exercises, opening and closing the mouth, feeling the tension release through the jaw, and then just taking some time, another 30 seconds again to bring awareness and start to allow the body to relax and release that tension. And so, like I said, it only needs to take, bare minimum 90 seconds. You can start to build up and add on to that. The perfect time to do that is, maybe between meetings if you're, kind of busy professional and back-to-back meetings. That's a great opportunity. I often like to do it either if I'm going to have to drive. I don't really like to drive long distances or in traffic. So, like, either before I get in the car or after I get in the car, kind of releasing that stress and tension that I get from driving. And those are good opportunities for me. And then, like I said, as you kind of grow the practice, you start to have that awareness like, oh, this really does help. I actually feel a difference, and a difference in physically as well as, mentally, emotionally, how I'm presenting, how I'm interacting with others. You start to feel less tension you're carrying. Um, and so it creates more positive relationships in your life as well. And then you can kind of build on the practice. I like to do it in the morning when I first wake up, especially. I take more time in the morning to breathe and meditate, as well as doing some movement. And it's one thing I'd like about the practice because it's awareness, you're customizing it to your specific needs. If you go to like a fitness class or a yoga class, the instructor is moving through the various phases of the class and only spending specific amounts of time focusing on certain things. But with somatics, you can spend as much time as you need, as your body is telling you that it needs to feel the relief that you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's refreshingly doable. A reminder that self care doesn't have to be complex to be effective.
Exactly.
It's such a personal, invisible experience. How did clients reframe their relationship with pain without feeling dismissed?
Um, it really comes with that awareness. Um, excuse me, bringing in the awareness of what your body needs specifically. And, when I work with clients, we tailor the practice to meet their needs, whether it's adjusting the time of day and helping them become aware of, the triggers and when they need to do the practice. It can vary from person to person what is more beneficial for them. Um, and then it's drawing in on their actual physical pain as well, mental, emotional, and physical, so that they're actually addressing the needs versus, like I was mentioning, if you're going to a fitness class, you're just going through the motions. You may not even hit the areas that are of concern, and sometimes you might exasperate the pain because you're doing exercises that are not actually beneficial for your condition. It might make it worse. Or you're, not really treating the problem. And so coming into this practice, especially with my book, Somatic Exercise Made Simple, you're given a list of different exercises that targets certain areas, and you can really start to identify, okay, where am I feeling this, and which movements are actually relieving that pain, discomfort, and giving me, kind of the longevity that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And also, have you ever found that acknowledging pain fully actually reduces its intensity?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's usually when we're ignoring it or trying to ignore it, pretend it's not there. It it's only making it worse. When we're acknowledging it and actually giving our body the attention that it needs to find relief, that's when the real healing starts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. The idea that compassion, not resistance, might be the real medicine.
Right.
And you bridge science and self awareness beautifully. Where do you think the future of stress and pain management is headed? More clinical or more conscious?
Um, that's a good question. As I see the practice start to grow, um, I think it's a combination. There are more practitioners becoming aware of, the style of healing, this holistic way of living. And I think more are starting to draw into it in terms of, you know, m- traditional medicine, whether it be pharmaceutical or, um, your physicians, more people starting to step back from just immediately wanting to take a drug or prescribe a drug, and also at least supplementing it with similar practices, or at least encouraging their patients to start trying these practices. And I think once there becomes more um, practices like this more readily available, making it more accessible to people, so that they're more open to trying it. I think that in itself has been a barrier for a lot of people. Just not knowing where to start, not knowing what to do, how to do it. People think, "Oh, breath work. What is that? Do I just breathe? How do I do it and actually feel relief?" But it does take some guidance, at least initially, so you can feel the benefit. And so until more practitioners are starting to provide some more of that guidance and making more available, um, I think it's going to be on the individuals more to do their research until it becomes more of a regular practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And how can practitioners and patients collaborate to make that sustainable?
Yeah, I think, like I was mentioning, just making some more practices readily available, whether they're practitioners are providing more guides and informations to their um, either patients or clients, um, having more um, sessions, workshops available for people to start to feel some of the relief. Some of it could be targeted at certain populations, like either elderly populations, or I was doing sessions with veterans who've gone through like post traumatic stress disorders, kind of finding different populations, especially that, really need it. Another group I focus on is with busy professionals. And so I'll go to various networking groups or events for professionals to start to educate and bring some of these techniques, and just, making it simple for people, making it accessible, helping people understand that you don't have to be in a yoga studio or a fitness studio to do these. Like everything can be done at home, in your office chair, in your bed, whatever the case may be. You're not breaking up a sweat. A lot of people assume that when I say the word exercise, that it means like running, jogging, all those things. But the act of doing an exercise is just, a technique, a step by step technique to achieve a goal. So, um, somatic exercises are simple, which is why I named the book "Somatic Exercise Made Simple."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that vision feels both grounded and hopeful. Exactly the kind of balance we need in healing today.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, what an enlightening conversation. Dr. Danielle Griffin reminds us that healing isn't about escaping discomfort, it's about meeting it with curiosity, breath, and trust. If this episode inspired you, take a few minutes today to tune into your body, breathe deeply, and listen. Harmony begins within.